I first looked at the discs for disc 1 of season 6, I looked at it and I thought first, these episodes I think, are fine, but not the ones that stand out to me the most. But then when I watched them again, I'm like, it was kind of like they were better than I thought they were. Gave me some more laughs, more things I was intrigued by. Especially, of course, watching the inside looks of one. It's like, it felt like fresh, fresh material was going through me. Even though I've definitely seen these episodes before and known what they were. The Chaperone, though, specifically, of course, as I mentioned at the end of season 5 with The Opposite, it was kind of like an end of an era, with George, ending 3 years of being unemployed, getting a job with the Yankees. He's not with the girl he met in The Opposite. Don't know what happened there, since it was supposed to be, like George doing The Opposite and winning the girl, but the girl's not here anymore. But he's with the Yankees. Elaine lost her job with Pendant Publishing because they closed. So now she's the one trying to, get her life going again. I guess she got a new apartment, but apparently, because she got kicked out of her apartment at the end of season 5, Jerry just remains even Steven, and Kramer still, well, Kramer. But The Chaperone was a good episode. Again, like I said, most of these episodes on season 6, most of them were like, I knew of them, but I feel like a little more high of them than I did before I started watching these first 6 episodes of season 6. We're also approaching the halfway mark. I believe this is review number 87, I believe it is. Let me double check right here real quick. Let me double check the list, the playlist. How many videos are there? 86, yeah. So the 4th episode, which I believe is the Chinese women episode, I believe that's the one. The fourth episode on disc 1 of season 6 will be halfway done with the series, and of course we will be doing the 100th episode, which is more so of like a clip show. We'll be doing that as well when we get to the 100th episode. But hence I say, even though looking at pulling this set album, I'm thinking, these are okay, but not the best ones. There are definitely a lot of episodes in season 6, especially on the 2nd disc, that I'm a big fan of. But let's talk about The Chaperone. But also, I forgot to mention this before when I said how The Chaperone is kind of like the beginning of a new era for a lot of things. It was also the first episode directed by Andy Ackerman, who, of course, seemed to... I mentioned a lot whenever Larry Charles was around, because Larry Charles was no longer with the series after this, how he was, like, the one that seemed like play with, like, some dark humor. Well, I feel like Ackerman took a lot of, like, extremes from everyone else's, ideas, and merged it into one idea, it felt like. Not every episode was like that, but of course, obviously, I thought they were going even more outside the box, some of the crazy ideas they had. Such as, of course, introducing a season arc character, Mr. Pitt, or Justin Pitt, played by Ian Abercrombie in this episode, and, how much of a nutcase he was, but very good, memorable character for sure, for Seinfeld. But let's get into the main story. Let's roll in. So, the episode starts with George in the Yankees locker room with Danny Tartabull. He's analyzing a swing, just chilling with the Yankees, and of course, as we do learn, in a later inside look, George may seem like he knows a lot about sports, which of course is because his character is based off of Larry David. Jason Alexander in real life, though, knows nothing about sports. So this is the complete opposite, no pun intended, of who Jason Alexander is, of course, as far as what comes to sports. He's talking with Danny, and Danny's saying how he's feeling all hot and whatnot. So then, George checks the material that the uniform's made out of, and George thought this whole time it was cotton. It ends up being polyester. So he's basically going to be going around and starting campaigning that he thinks the Yankees should have cotton uniforms instead of polyester. Which he does make the pitch, actually, to manager Buck Showalter at the time of the Yankees. And I think Showalter is now the manager of the Mets, I believe he was with the Orioles for a while. And I think just recently he became manager for the Mets, I think. So that was an interesting little blurb there. And Ackerman sure did enjoy, getting some shots with some Yankee players in this first episode. We'll get to that, of course, a little later on. But they did end up going through with the... Well, I'll say this. They did end up going through with the cotton uniforms. And at first, George, there was getting positive feedback on them, and George felt he was a genius for, contributing to the Yankees in some way, as he's begun his career there. Jerry and Elaine, meanwhile, did attend a Yankee game. And funny enough, Elaine was wearing an Orioles cap. Remember how she wore her Orioles cap back in the letter episode, but they're in the owner's box, and they kicked her out of the owner's box for wearing the Orioles cap? But of course, they went to the game. Elaine went to go buy hot dogs, but Jared's getting on her saying she doesn't have to pay for them, and Elaine was like, just because I'm not working doesn't mean I don't have money, which she obviously did, because she's definitely one of the more successful career-wise out of the four of them. When she goes up to leave, several members of the Miss America pageant come sitting down like a row or two in front of Jerry. And Jerry starts making casual chit-chat with Miss Rhode Island. They hit it off, and Jerry gets a date scheduled with her. So he's excited about that. He calls her up, goes to schedule a date, but the date they're going to go out, the woman's chaperone was unable to make it. So Kramer just happened to be in the area. And basically Jerry asks him if he wants to, pose as date's chaperone, and explains who she is and whatnot. Kramer, though, admits he's always been a fan of the Miss America pageant, so he's more than willing to come. And Jerry offers to buy him dinner. So Kramer came, but Kramer got way too into it and started asking her all these questions. And Karen, who was Miss Rhode Island, really saw how Kramer was very into it, and she asked him to be basically her personal trainer, which drove Jerry nuts. Because, they'd be in the limo, getting ready to drop her back off. They went to kiss goodbye, but then Kramer was like, can't do that. There's actually a moment where they're driving away in the limo, and Kramer's singing the Miss America song, and then it gets bleeped out, but Jerry goes, "Oh, shut the boop up!" And as soon as it gets bleeped out by the limo's car horn, which I thought was pretty funny. Meanwhile, though, Elaine, since she has lost her job with Pendant Publishing, has an interview at Doubleday for the same position that in real life Jackie Kennedy had. And fun fact, this is 1994, the year Jackie Kennedy died. The season 5 finale aired the day Jackie Kennedy died. So the story is Elaine was interviewing for her spot at Doubleday. And in the interview, she talks to Jocelyn Landis about, grace, and how she has like some grace, but then she's like, you have no grace at all. You have no grace, so you have grace, basically. And then basically, they talk, and then she's like, we'll be in touch, make a decision in a few days. And Elaine's like, I got no chance, right? And she's like, no. So Elaine starts, she's putting on like her shade, she's putting on like some type of like a bandana over the top of her head. Here comes walking in Justin Pitt. And he says something about the copying machine. And then just randomly, Miss Landis happens to introduce Mr. Pitt to Elaine, and Mr. Pitt is intrigued by Elaine. They go out to lunch. They're talking about Grace again and stuff for a little bit. He then offers Elaine a job as his personal assistant. Sounds promising, right? So Elaine takes it. He says he can pay her as much as Pendant was, but he would need her to start right away, which, obviously Elaine needs a job, so she's not opposed to it. And her first order of business, to get Mr. Pitt a pair of socks. Which thought was going to be easy as pie. Nope. They either were ones that had too much elastic, too tight, ones that will only, hold up for so long when eventually fall down his foot and whatnot. Obviously showing the early signs that, it's kind of like those who are fans of The Big Bang Theory. I mean, obviously this was made way before The Big Bang Theory, but it's kind of like, in some case, how it was when Sheldon hired his assistant Alex to do some crazy stuff. Which, okay, Elaine did do some, publishing work with Mr. Pitt. But a lot of stuff you actually see her do was something ridiculous as, like, socks, or getting him, like, a certain pencil, or like she filled in at a meeting for him in an upcoming episode whenever he was just obsessed with this 3-dimensional artwork. Like, this, she obviously did do more than just be like his slave in some ways. But the only things you saw her actually do on TV, at least for now, was just some really petty stuff like get socks and such. But this is the introducing of Mr. Pitt. And I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus even said she still, in real life, calls him Mr. Pitt. Anyways, though, meanwhile, back to the main story about Miss America. Jerry was going to Atlantic City for a show, and Karen was going to be there for the pageant. He had a free ticket, so he offered it to George, and George took it to go to Atlantic City to have some fun that weekend. He wasn't working that weekend. So, of course, since Karen hired Kramer as her personal assistant, Kramer came along too, which just bothered the crap out of Jerry. So for the rest of the episode, even though Jerry was dating Miss Rhode Island, you never really saw them together again after that. Now, one of the nights they were in Atlantic City, they couldn't sleep because there was these birds outside making these loud noises. So Jerry and George, sick of them, Jerry walks over, has this like ice bucket full of water, dumps them onto the birds, and it shuts them up. The next morning, we come to find out it was the trained birds that Karen had for her act at the pageant. And they're dead. And of course, Kramer finds out, and Jerry realizes what happened, and Kramer finds out, and he gets all pissed off at Jerry. They go to Plan B. Basically, is for Karen to sing. And she sings, but obviously it didn't work out. But I still wasn't that convinced that it was the worst singing in the world I've ever heard. But of course, after all the coaching, unfortunately she did not win. And then, of course, while they were still in Atlantic City, after getting all the praises, getting back to the cotton and polyester uniforms, we come to a game to see that they switched. I'm sorry, that Jerry and George were from their hotel room was watching the Miss America pageant, and then once they realized that Karen was doomed, they switched to the Yankee game, and then they said how the Yankees are running on the field, but they seem to be struggling a bit. Apparently, the uniforms were great, but then they got washed, and they shrunk. Shrinkage. I would love to joke about that again, but that's not the same thing. But George was right back in the Hamptons. When you put a shirt in cold water, it shrinks things. Gotta make the joke. But anyways, yes, the uniform shrunk, and apparently Don Mattingly's pants ripped open. So I guess after that, the Yankees also went back to polyester uniforms. But this was featured also the first time that Jerry had ever said, "That's a shame," which was the first, basically. So that was the introducing of "That's a shame." We've heard him call George Biff several times throughout the season, but this is the first time he goes, "Oh, that's a shame." And that's basically the episode. I mean, it was a good episode. Again, we meet Mr. Pitt, and Elaine gets a new job, even though Mr. Pitt's crazy. Kramer just, goes all out and takes it so seriously with this, with the idea of, him, meeting a Miss America, pageant contestant, as he's a big fan of the show as well. And then, of course, just interfering in Jerry's relationship with her. And then, of course, Jerry inadvertently ruins the birds, which sucks for sure. But again, I said that it was definitely also the beginning of Andy Ackerman's time with Seinfeld as well. Any other things? Let me see here. I got to do this, say this here. And apparently, also the working title of this was also going to be called The Birds. Also, probably just like the movie. And this is also, of course, this episode aired the same day that the season premiere of Friends premiered, which of course also, as we mentioned, back in the wife episode, season 5, Courtney Cox, who played Jerry's fake wife, plays Monica Geller, which of course I'm definitely a big fan. Become a bigger fan of Friends as I've been binge watching that lately. But that's pretty much it. Good opener. Like I said, these next 6 episodes are episodes that are just like, I look at first, I'm like, they weren't too bad. But I watch them again, I'm like, they actually are a little more funny than I thought. But next episode is one I definitely remembered. But next episode wasn't just a regular episode, but it had to be a big episode. I'm changing the words there because of what the next episode is. But we will talk about that one next as we get to the Big Salad. And of course, that came from a real life experience from Larry David and a couple of the staff members for the Seinfeld crew. So guys, that's your thoughts on the Chaperone episode. What are your thoughts on the Chaperone episode? What are your thoughts on Mr. Pitt? What are your thoughts on Andy Ackerman's new philosophies? Make sure your thoughts down in the comment section below, and be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel, and follow me on Twitter as well while you're at it at DemandAirboy93. Till then guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out, everybody.